Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today, a video in the Waste Not, Want Not category. I'm going to create not one, not two, but 3 art journal spreads in my accidental art journal. What's an accidental art journal? Well, this is an art journal where I make marvelous out of the discarded. I'll link the video where I set up this art journal. But basically, what goes in here is the discarded. The leftover tissue, the leftover napkin, if I have leftover paint, modeling paste, and this stays right on my desk, and I grab it when there is leftovers, when there's things that I am too lazy to put away, and I'm just going to slap it on. And over time, you add to each page, building up layers, and at some point, everything kind of comes together and you may be inspired to finish the art journal page, which is what I'm going to do today. And sometimes it looks like a hot mess. And sometimes you may like colors. I also experiment with stamps and stencils and techniques in this book. The book cost me $1.50. There's very little risk. But what I find is because there's no risk, I am more creative, and sometimes I end up with a page that I absolutely love. And then I can make that on another art journal page or on a canvas. So these 3 pages all started because I had an excess of Prussian blue paint on my craft mat at an end of a creative session. And I couldn't waste it, so I opened up the book, flipped through several pages, and decided, okay, which one could benefit from some Prussian blue? So on this one, I grabbed some mark makers. I thinned the Prussian blue paint down a little bit. I added circles because there was some circle stenciling already on there. And now I'm adding squares because if you look in the middle, there's square modeling paste, again, through a stencil. So I'm responding to what was already there and building on it. On this page, this was napkin that was put down, so there's great texture there. And then I colorized it with my Inktense blocks. That was 2 other sessions. Now I'm just adding some Prussian blue splatters. It's not much, but it's adding another fine detail to it. This page had gel prints that I ripped a strip and glued them down, and then I put some modeling paste on it, which is all very grungy. So I'm adding a wash of Prussian blue, and I'm mixing in a little bit of yellow green. No, it wasn't leftover paint, but again, I'm responding to what was on the page. That color was on the gel prints that were already there. So I'm just building up because I'm liking the colors. So I have fairly good backgrounds. Now this one was reading very much under the sea to me. Very ocean-like. So I started, as I'm doing this, I'm starting to get ideas for what I could do next. Is there enough here to say the background is pretty much done? And I'm looking around because I also want to grab things that are just hanging around, things that are in my stash of focal images and right close at hand. I don't want to really dig out anything new. So first off, we're going to do this page. And I had this circle template, so I thought, you know what? I am going to trace this out with my white Stabilo all pencil, 3 circles, and then at this point I was thinking I was going to make some tropical fish or angelfish and put those in the focal images. That was my idea at this point. Anyways, To bring out the circles, I am using the black acrylic paint and my angle brush, and I am shading and going to also highlight around the circle to make it stand out from the background. This is a trick, and you can do any shape. I've just done circles here to bring out, add interest to a background and to turn part of the background into the focal image. It makes these circles look more 3D. One of my favorite things to do on an art journal page. So once the black's done, I'm going to do the exact same thing with white. And I'm going to go on the inside of the circle. So basically I went on the outside of the circle for the black, and I'm going on the inside of the circle. And between the two, you can see how those circles seem to come off out of the page. Semi 3D. You can do this shading technique with a flat brush, but I prefer the angle brush. Once that's dry, I'm looking to focal point. So here our background is, and right across the color wheel we have the reds and oranges. So I'm going to pick a focal point that is going to pop, that is going to stand out on this background. Basic color theory. So I grab my bin that has focal images that I haven't put away, and I'm pulling out some and auditioning them. And I'm just showing you a couple of them. But I did come upon these fronds that I had painted at some other project, and I had some excess, so typically I make more than what I need, and then the excess does go in the bin and it builds up my stash, and then I can use it up when I want to do a quick art journal page, as is the case. These were already cut, they were the perfect color. I auditioned them on top of the bubbles, and I'm just going to glue those down. These fronds I stenciled through, and then I stamped through that stencil with a script stamp. But all that work was already done. So when you're using the discarded or the leftovers, I went to my Simplify sentiment pack and I picked out the sentiment All You Need Is Less, which is kind of the theme with this art journal. Using what you have sometimes creates wonderful pages. Just adding the length of the stem. I grab my General's charcoal and I'm just going to shade around here. And then around the sentiment as well. Wasn't exactly where I thought I was going to go, but I do love it. Now, for this background, I had this hands that I got from supercoloring.com. And I sized it for the page, but I've had this. I print out ideas that I have, and so now is the time. Then I grabbed a colored coffee filter that I had painted and stenciled over that I have in my stash, and I will link the video where I show how I do that, because if you haven't done that, you really want to give it a try. And I cut the circle to shape to fit in the hands. I'm kind of turning this into a crystal ball, so to speak. But again, I'm using the colors opposite the color wheel for that. Now, if I just glued that down, because there's dark in the background, that would dull the bright colors that are on the coffee filter. So I'm giving this a coat of gesso, so I can glue it down onto a light background, so the bright colors of the coffee filter shine through. So I'm just positioning everything. I want to make sure that I have the coffee filter going the direction I want, so the patterning that's on it is best. There was also a little bit of that teal on the coffee filter, and that works well with what was in the background. Now, because my backgrounds, I use color mediums that are permanent when they're dry. I do not have to worry about anything smearing. I'm gluing down the hands and everything with fluid matte medium and giving it a good coat on top. I'm undecided at this time if I'm going to leave the hands white or if I want to colorize them. I went to my possibility pack and sentiment pack, Embrace Possibility, and I found this sentiment, all things are possible if you believe, that I had printed out on tissue paper. Again, leftovers. This was something I printed out at another time. I'm gluing that down with fluid matte medium and it shines through and I get to see the color. So all my sentiments, you can print them out on tissue paper, and I do have a video that I show how to print on tissue paper. I'm shading around the crystal ball to make it stand out, and I'll be shading around the hands as well as the outside edging the page. I want the focal image to stand out, look 3D. As I'm doing this, I get another idea for using those hands. So stay tuned. You won't be the last time. And that's one of the benefits. I'm using it on this page and I'm hoping to inspire other thoughts. I'm going to give it a try because I often find that my best ideas come when I am creating. I wanted to brighten the color, so I grabbed out my Inktense blocks and I'm giving them a wash of yellow, orange, red, whatever colors are in the background. I'm just giving a light wash. It's not covering up the pattern because it is translucent, and just brightening it up. After all, it's my focal point. Decide to colorize it. I was going to use my Inktense blocks, wasn't giving me the effect I want, so then I just mix some orange paint, some Naples yellow, a little bit of magenta and white gesso to get a flesh tone, and I'm just painting up the hands. Wiping it back, I'm going to add some shading here. I wasn't exactly happy with the shading that I did and how it turned out, but next time I'll be better. So again, using the Accidental Art Journal to practice things and to work out details. This is where you can make mistakes because, like I said, it's just a cheap composition book. It's not precious. So here it kind of got a little carried away. You're going to see me take a baby wipe and wipe it back and go back and forth. Needed a little something in the background, so I grabbed the Prussian blue and this. I'll put the name of the stencil in the description box. I'm forgetting it. I think link tiles? No, I can't remember. But it makes like a star pattern, and it's just that perfect something in the background, turning it into kind of a night sky. You know, all things are possible when you believe. And a good splatter of gold over top. You could put the earth, print out a picture of the earth and put that in the hands. Sentiment from my Reach for the Stars sentiment pack would be good in that case. So let's do the last page. This has some modeling paste through a stencil right in the middle, and that I don't like it at all. So I'm just going to try to knock it back a little bit. I got some more Prussian blue and I'm just going to colorize it. I don't want it to be white. I don't want it to be so noticeable. So I'm kind of giving this a bit of a wash, changing the background because I don't like that. It's right in the middle. I think that was my mistake. I put it front and center, so it's just interfering with my eye, so I'm just going to knock it back. I'm adding a little bit of aqua in here to go again with what's already was in part of that background. And a little bit of that yellow-green, which when it mixed with the Prussian blue is going to make more of a teal color. If you don't like something, you can cover it up with gesso or colorize it, change it up. So I decide I'm going to put a flamingo on there, and again the pink coral color is across the color wheel from that teal and blue. Same basic color principles. And I'm just mixing some magenta with bright yellow, and I'm making a bit of a coral color. I'm going to add a little bit of white gesso to this, and I'm going to paint it on getting different shades. I don't want it one tone. I don't want it perfectly mixed. I want to get some variation. I think if you paint it with one color, it just looks very, very flat. So I'm just using my angle brush, which I love. I find it always gets around those nooks and crannies. And if you're painting in things, I find I have the most control with it. So I'm just giving it a good coat, and you can see some places are more magenta, some are more coral. And again, this printable comes from supercoloring.com, and I sized it. Actually, this is what was just sitting there. I just cut it out, and I was going to make it work. Here I grabbed this pineapple stencil, and I am applying quinacridone magenta, a darker magenta. You could use a floral one. So look at your stencils. This is making it look like the feathers. It's adding a lot of interest to my focal image very, very easily. But look at your stencils. I'm using a stencil called Pineapple to make marks on my flamingo because I don't want it to be plain. I went and I searched for a bunch of flamingo type quotes, printed them out, and then I'm deciding which one, which font, which sentiment do I want. And I chose the one that says, "I'm tickled pink." Playing around, do I want it up here? Actually, I really like it up there. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't put it there. I do put it in the lower left. The rest of the sentiments I will just put into my bin that sits on my desk for words. You saw the one I had for focal images. Gluing everything down with gel medium. I think it would have been great to have used modeling paste through the stencil with that pineapple stencil and then colorize it. Then it would have texture as well. So there's always a way of bumping it up and doing more. And if I was doing that on a canvas, that's exactly what I would do, or a wood panel. I would put modeling paste. I would add more techniques. So one of my things this year is to use it or lose it. My pit markers made that list. I haven't used it for years. So I'm going to use my pit marker here to shade the peacock, or the flamingo, sorry. Now what you do here is you put it on, and it needs to be a non-porous surface. So I had covered this with matte medium, so it becomes a non-porous surface. It's not going to soak right into the paper. That allows it to stay wet for a while, so you put it on, and then you can smudge it and move it. Now shading this way is something new to me, so again, a good place to start practicing this skill. But I have these big brush markers, these pit brush markers. I think there are 12 of them in this kit, different colors, so I can shade with those colors quickly and easily. This also works really well if I'm on the go, if I'm traveling. I can have my pit brush markers and I don't need the paints. So if you have pit brush markers, grab them out. Now, if you have the smaller one, it will work the exact same way. You don't need the big ones in order to do what I'm doing with them. I'm just using what I have. You do the same. I want the flamingo to stand out a little bit more, so I'm giving it some shadow, some shading with the black acrylic paint. I'm floating acrylic, doing my usual technique, and it really makes it stand out. Loving how this works. I'm painting a little bit on the beak. I looked at pictures, and the beak is typically either yellowish or whitish with the black tips. Outlining the sentiment with my Sakura glaze. And then edging the page with black as well to frame it. So each of these pages basically followed the same color scheme. The backgrounds were pretty much the same, although different. And the focal images used were complementary colors across the color wheel. So they give a lot of energy and a lot of pop. This is a little dead and flat. I don't like it, so I'm grabbing the stencil from Crafter's Workshop that I had already used on other parts of this. I'm using the yellow green, and I'm putting the paint through the stencil here, stenciling, trying to get some of those marks in there to make that center part work. Now here I didn't put quite enough paint through the stencil, and I discovered either I have to press harder or just put one layer, let it hold the stencil, let it dry a little bit, and then layer it up. There you can see more of the circles. So now that I've figured out how to do it, I'm just going to go over what I had there and add another layer of paint to make those circles a little bit more present. And I'm liking that much more. So, I mean, putting that modeling paste in the middle isn't something that this page benefited from at all. I made it work. If I was going to redo this page, I would not put that modeling paste. I would do everything else because I love it, but I wouldn't put the modeling paste in the middle the way I did. And I have leftover green, yellow green, so I'm just going to add it to this page, which not sure that was the right choice, but you know what? I've got a challenge for another day. So here's the 3 pages. In all, just finishing these pages took about the time it would take me to do an art journal page from start to finish. And I got 3 done. Thanks so much for watching. Check out the Accidental Art Journal playlist